Do not take Social Security until you watch this. 5 reasons. If you're getting ready to file for Social Security, I want you to stop for the next 15 minutes before you do. Here's the number that should give you pause. Claiming at 62 instead of waiting until 70 can cost a household over $100,000 in lifetime benefits. That's not a scare tactic. That's simple math, and I'm going to walk you through exactly where that number comes from. I know the pressure to file feels real. Maybe you just retired. Maybe the paycheck stopped. Maybe you just turned 62 and it feels like free money sitting there waiting for you. But this is one of the few financial decisions in retirement that's largely irreversible once you're past a certain window. So today, I'm giving you 5 specific reasons to pause before you file. And by reason 3, you may want to call the Social Security Administration and put your application on hold. Before we get into it, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I put out a new video like this every week, walking through exactly the kind of retirement money decisions that are easy to rush and hard to undo. And if you know someone who's about to file for Social Security, please share this with them today, not next week. Timing genuinely matters here. I'm Anne, and for years I've helped people slow down and think clearly about exactly these kinds of decisions. Let's get into the 5 reasons why this decision is so hard to undo. Before we get to the 5 reasons, you need to understand why this matters so much more than most financial decisions. Once you file for Social Security and start receiving benefits, you generally have a very narrow window, about 12 months, to withdraw your application and pay back what you've received, essentially hitting an undo button. After that window closes, your claiming decision is locked in permanently for the rest of your life. There's a second, more limited option too. Once you reach full retirement age, you can choose to voluntarily suspend your benefit until age 70, which lets your benefit grow again during the suspension. But that only works if you're already at full retirement age. It doesn't help someone who claimed early at 62 and wants to undo that decision years later. So this isn't like choosing the wrong Roth conversion amount or missing a tax deadline, where you can course correct next year. This is closer to a one-time fork in the road. That's exactly why it deserves 5 extra minutes of your attention before you submit that application. Reason 1. The permanent reduction for claiming early. Your Social Security benefit is calculated at what's called your full retirement age, somewhere between 66 and 67, depending on your birth year. If you claim before that age, your benefit is permanently reduced. Not temporarily, permanently, for as long as you live. Claim at 62, and depending on your exact full retirement age, your benefit could be reduced by roughly 25 to 30% compared to what you'd receive at full retirement age. That reduction isn't a penalty that goes away later. It follows you for the rest of your life, adjusting upward only with cost of living increases from that lower starting point. Let's make this concrete, with simple, rounded numbers just to see the shape of it. Say your benefit at full retirement age would be $2,000 a month. Claim at 62 instead, and that same benefit might land closer to $1,400 a month. Permanently. That's a $600 a month gap every single month for the rest of your life. Over 20 years, that gap alone adds up to well over $100,000 in benefits you never receive. And that's before we even get to the growth you're giving up by not waiting past full retirement age. Reason 2. The growth you give up by not waiting. Here's the flip side of reason 1. For every year you delay claiming past your full retirement age, up until age 70, your benefit grows by roughly 8% per year, guaranteed, regardless of what the stock market or interest rates are doing. Think about that for a moment. There is no other guaranteed, government-backed investment available to you that pays roughly 8% a year, every year, for delaying a decision. If you wait from full retirement age all the way to 70, your monthly benefit can end up 24% higher than it would have been at full retirement age. And depending on your birth year, as much as 70 to 77% higher than if you'd claimed at 62. Going back to our example, that $2,000 $1,200 full retirement age benefit could grow to roughly $2,480 a month by waiting until 70. Compare that to the $1,400 check from claiming at 62, and you're looking at more than $1,000 a month difference for the rest of your life, simply based on when you decided to file. This is where that $100,000 lifetime figure comes from. Stack the permanent reduction from claiming early on top of the growth you give up by not waiting, multiply that gap across 20 or 25 years of retirement, and the math adds up fast, especially for the higher earner in a household, since that decision often also determines the survivor benefit, which we'll get to in Reason 4. Take a breath here because I know this is a lot of numbers and percentages. The takeaway is simple. Every year you wait, within reason, meaningfully and permanently increases your check for the rest of your life. Reason 3, the earnings test. If you're still working, here's a reason a lot of people don't think about at all. If you claim Social Security before your full retirement age and you're still working, even part-time, your benefits can be temporarily withheld through something called the earnings test. For every certain amount you earn above a set annual limit, before reaching full retirement age, Social Security withholds a portion of your benefit. In some cases, withholding $1 for every $2 you earn above that threshold. For a lot of people who claim at 62 while still working a part-time job or consulting gig, this means checks they thought they'd be receiving simply don't show up month after month because they've been withheld against future benefits. Now, that withheld money isn't necessarily gone forever. Social Security does recalculate your benefit upward once you reach full retirement age to account for the months withheld. But in the meantime, if you filed expecting a certain monthly check and it doesn't arrive because of this earnings test, that can create real cash flow stress at exactly the wrong time. If you're still working at all, even part-time, this reason alone is worth a serious pause before filing early. Reason 4, the survivor benefit. It locks in for your spouse. This is the reason that affects the most people and gets talked about the least. If you're married, whichever spouse claims the higher benefit essentially sets a floor for what the surviving spouse will receive after one of you passes away. Here's how it works. When one spouse dies, the surviving spouse doesn't keep both checks. They generally step up to receive the higher of the two benefits, and the lower one goes away. So if the higher earner in a household claims early at 62 and locks in a permanently reduced benefit, that reduced amount is also what the surviving spouse will be left with for the rest of their life, potentially decades later. Let's put a number on this too. If the higher earning spouse would have received $2,480 a month by waiting until 70, but instead claimed at 62 and locked in $1,400 a month, the surviving spouse doesn't just lose out during both spouses' lifetimes. They inherit that lower $1,400 figure as their own benefit for as long as they live afterward, which could easily be another 10 or 15 years alone. This means the claiming decision isn't just about one person's monthly check. It's about protecting whichever spouse ends up outliving the other, often at a stage of life when they can least afford a reduced income. This reason alone has changed the minds of a lot of the couples I've talked to. Reason 5. How claiming early can stack with other income and raise your tax bill. Here's the reason that ties back to something we talk about often on this channel. Up to 85% of your Social Security benefit can become taxable, depending on your total income from other sources: pensions, retirement account withdrawals, part-time work, investment income. Here's roughly how that works. Social Security looks at what's called your combined income, your other income, plus half of your Social Security benefit. Cross certain thresholds, and up to 50% of your benefit becomes taxable. Cross a higher threshold, and up to 85% becomes taxable. These thresholds haven't been adjusted for inflation in decades, which means more retirees cross them every year without realizing it. If you claim Social Security early while you're still working or still pulling from other income sources, you can end up stacking that Social Security income right on top of everything else, pushing more of your benefit into that 85% taxable territory and potentially into a higher tax bracket altogether. The same kind of income stacking trap we've discussed with first-year retirement income before. Waiting to claim, especially if you can bridge the gap with savings instead, sometimes means less of your Social Security ends up taxed at all, simply because of how the total income picture is timed. Frank's story. Let me tell you about Frank. Frank retired at 62 and felt an itch to file for Social Security right away. It felt like money that was his, sitting there waiting. And after 40 years of working, he didn't see the point in waiting any longer. He filed within a month of retiring. 2 years later at a family gathering, his brother-in-law, who had waited until 68, mentioned his own monthly check almost casually. Frank did the math afterward and realized his brother-in-law was receiving nearly 50% more per month for the rest of his life from the same Social Security system for the same career-length earnings history. Frank told me, "I didn't think about what it would look like 10 or 20 years down the road. I was just thinking about right now." He was within his rights to feel that way, but once he understood the permanent nature of that reduction and what it meant for his wife's eventual survivor benefit too, he told me he wished someone had sat him down for 15 minutes before he filed. The framework. What to check before you file. So here's your checklist, friend, before you submit that application. Know your full retirement age exactly. It's not the same for everyone, and it's not the same as 65 for most people retiring today. Run the actual break-even math for your specific numbers, ideally with a financial professional, rather than a generic rule of thumb. If you're married, seriously consider the survivor benefit impact, not just your own monthly check. If you're still working at all, check whether the earnings test applies to you. And model how claiming now versus later might affect how much of your benefit ends up in that 85% taxable bracket, alongside your other income. Have you already filed? If it's been less than 12 months, you may still have the option to withdraw your application. It's worth a call to confirm. Recap. Let's bring this together. Claiming early means a permanent reduction, potentially $600 a month or more for life. Waiting means guaranteed growth of roughly 8% a year, every year until 70. Working while claiming early can trigger benefit withholding through the earnings test. Your claiming age can lock in your spouse's survivor benefit for the rest of their life. And claiming early alongside other income can push more of your benefit into that 85% taxable territory. This is fixable, even now, even if you're days away from filing. You just need 15 minutes to run your own numbers before you make a decision that follows you and potentially your spouse for the rest of your life. If this gave you something to think about before you file, hit like on this video. Subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss next week's video. And share this with anyone you know who's about to claim Social Security. It might be the most useful thing you send them all year. I'm Anne. Thank you for spending this time with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.